So yesterday I got up feeling great, had my coffee, made a video. I mean, I was dedicated, motivated, and over-caffeinated. And I made this video, and I went over like 20 Bible verses that contradict Protestant theology. And I felt like I was on point, I was in the zone, and then my phone went up out of storage and shut off, and I lost the video. And I was so aggravated. I was like, oh no, are you serious? I had like 90% of the video done. And I had a super busy day. I had my family come over. My wife was cooking a ton of stuff. And I was like, are you freaking serious? And this happened to me before. My son told me I had too much storage to get rid of my Rumble app. I have another channel where I talk about stuff that's banned from YouTube. And I don't want YouTube to take away this platform I have for sharing the gospel. I'm talking about the Catholic Church. So I knew that's all I had to do. But by the time I got that done, and I was just out of the zone, and I told my wife I'd run to the store for her. When I was done with the video, I actually had to get a few things. So I told her, I was like, oh man, I'm so freaking aggravated. I can't believe this happened. And my wife, gave me some wisdom and said, well, God didn't want you to make that video. And I said, yeah, I guess. I don't know. And so I'm driving to the supermarket yesterday. I'm like, Lord, show me, if you want me to change this video up or you don't want me to do it at all. And I seen a woman that years ago, I'm talking, my kids were little. And we were not members. I never signed membership of any church. I used to have this belief that, we were a spiritual church, invisible church, the Evangelical tradition that there's no physical church. It's a invisible church. So I would never sign membership. And the pastors used to get mad at me, but I wouldn't sign membership. But they would let me teach, preach, This particular church, I knew this woman, was a Baptist church, and my wife ran the MOPS, Mothers of Preschools, and it was a really great ministry. She had a lot of unsaved people, a lot of unchurched people, a lot of people from different churches come there and minister, because when you got preschoolers, it's hard, it's very hard. It's probably the hardest job is to raise a preschooler if you want to raise them right. So it was a great ministry she had, and pastor used to let me preach on Wednesday nights because the youth pastor, because he was always busy doing something. We found out later he was starting a new church where he was the lead pastor. He asked me to come, but I didn't. So I was pretty involved in this church, and but I haven't seen this woman since then. It's been years, and I noticed she was the manager of the supermarket bakery department, and it didn't surprise me because she was like a hard charger, really tough woman. So I was joking with her. I said, so you're the big kahuna now, and how's everything going? And then this tough woman broke down and cried and said her son was just killed in an accident like 6 weeks earlier. And it just blew me away, and I just started crying, and I gave her a big hug, and I held her, and we cried there together, and I told her how I lost my granddaughter, a few weeks ago as well. And she said, yeah, there's grief all around us. She said the guy I worked with just lost his 4-year-old granddaughter. And that's how old mine was. And then some woman in line looked back at us, and she looked like she was going to cry. And I was just reminded of an old hymn we used to sing in Protestant churches. They will know we are Christians by our love for one another. And I didn't know until a few minutes ago that was written by a Catholic priest. Protestants sing this all the time. I don't think they realize this was written by a Catholic priest in like the 1960s. But it comes right out of a Bible verse, John 13:15. I'm sorry. I might need my glasses for this one. Having a little rough morning, Monday morning. It's a little, I don't know, I didn't sleep too good. 13:35. And Jesus says, this is how they will know you're my disciples, by your love for one another. And I just want to confess that sometimes people can't tell I'm the disciple of Christ because I'm coming at my Protestant brothers and sisters hard. And my motivation is to bring them to the truth, to the fullness of the faith that I found. But sometimes it might not come across that way. So I want to apologize if I didn't come across in love, because I love my Protestant brothers and sisters. And, sometimes us Catholics don't love each other. But it all starts, it all starts in the domestic church. Mother Teresa said the hardest people to love are those closest to you, your family. Scott Hahn refers to it as the domestic church. We need to focus on the domestic church. The father needs to be the priest of his household and keep the family tight and loving one another. And you have to be able to receive the love of God. A lot of people, I talked about in my video how to be happy. Some people can't receive the love of God. You have to receive it in order to give it. You can't give something you don't have. And so I think that's a verse that a lot of us Catholic Christians as well as Protestant Christians, we believe it, but we don't always live up to its standards, that we need to love each other so the world can see that we're Christ's disciples. And like I said, I'm gonna do a part 2 because this store will be opening soon, so I gotta hurry up and just get a few verses in that I think pertain to what God showed me. Because like I said, I haven't seen this woman in years, and for her and she always seemed like a real tough woman, and she just broke down and cried, So God really showed me that, something needed to be said about that. So it kind of changed it was a whole different video I was doing. So same title, but it's a different video. And then I see, here's another verse that I've seen so many Protestants act like they don't believe in. Some of them twist it and say they don't believe it, and I'll tell you how they do it. But if you look at the whole chapter, it's 1 Corinthians chapter 6. 6:1 says that St. Paul says Christians should not sue one another. And I've seen a lot of and I know someone's going to put in the comments, well, Catholics do it too, and I'm sure there's some Catholic Christians that do this too. They feel the need, but I haven't seen it yet. I was in the Evangelical churches for 30 years. I've just been back to the Catholic Church 6 years, but I've seen it a lot in Protestant churches. And I'm not talking about businessmen. Christian businessmen shouldn't sue Christian businessmen either. I'm talking about ministries like what comes to my mind. Ron Carpenter had this big church, and he had some kind of deal with another big evangelist, John Gray, and they're suing each other for like millions of dollars because they're going to lose millions of dollars because of the way the deal went. I don't fully understand it, but it just looks really bad before the world that these Christians are suing each other over money. And St. Paul, like that chapter is. There's no taking that chapter out of context unless you mean to take it out of context. You can't accidentally take that out of context. St. Paul goes on to say in chapter 6, 1 Corinthians, why would you sue each other? Why would you go before pagans to settle a dispute of saints? Why, you guys are going to be judging angels. Why would you let pagans judge you? And the way I've seen it in the past, how these Protestant ministers twist it, and they say, well, they take a different verse out of context where Jesus talks about, if somebody, I believe it's Jesus talking about it. If somebody does something wrong, tell them about it. Hey, you're sinning, and then if they still don't stop sinning, bring a witness, and if they still don't stop sinning, bring them before the whole church, and if they don't stop sinning before the whole church, treat them as a pagan, basically excommunicate them. And they'll say that, well, if when I'm suing someone, if he's not listening to me, then I get to treat him as a pagan. That's the only argument they got, and that's, you can see that's like totally out of context. This is how Protestants rip this out of context, and there may be some Catholic Christians that do it as well, but I've seen it blatantly. I've seen a lot, and I'm not talking about businesses. Even that's wrong, And St. Paul said, basically, he says in that verse, it's better to be cheated than to, let the world judge you. Just, okay, let it go, Jesus says, someone takes your shirt, someone takes one of your gloves, give them the other glove, Someone has asked you to walk a mile, walk 2 miles. Just let it go, Just let it go, Christians are commanded not to sue one another. It's the bottom line. And just like a lot of sins that are hard to avoid in this world, that one might be hard for people with a lot of money. There's, a lot of Christians with a lot of money. But I've met, and again, I've met some godly Catholics, and I can compare. When I first moved down to Jersey, I first moved down to Florida, had 5 small kids, and, I was renting a house from a Baptist pastor. And that guy would be at my door on the first of the month, and I'd be like, I don't get paid till tomorrow. And this guy would get mad if I was a day late on the rent. And a few years back, I was renting a townhouse from a Catholic Christian, and he was one of the instruments God used to bring me back to the Catholic Church. But I was already leaning that way when I started renting this townhouse from him. And I remember getting laid off and said, listen, I just got laid off. I'm sorry, I'm going to be a couple of weeks late. And he was like, that's okay, Rob. And he showed me such grace. He actually lowered my rent. He said, I know you got a new job and things are struggling. He actually lowered my rent, imagine. And such a godly man. He could have sued me for, back rent or whatever, but you see what I'm saying? So I think, it's funny because this might sound weird, but you could look at how mobsters get things settled. They do sit downs. They don't go before the law because they can't, because everything they do is lawless. But besides that, their form of taking care of business, they have what they call a sit down. And there's certain rules in a sit down. You have to show respect to one another. So if you know someone's lying, you can't call them out and say you're lying, because that would be against the rules, And so you have to listen, and you have to, some of these mobsters are really smart in negotiations. They have to prove someone's lying without calling them a liar, and then all the guys in the sit down, all these mob bosses will make a decision. And that's I think that's a good example. Christians, we need to sit down and talk to, get our disputes out, but don't go before the law and let them figure it out for us. And just a funny kind of a side note, I don't know, there's a former mob boss, I believe he was a Colombo captain for the Colombo crime family, Michael Franchese. He went to jail 15 years, became a born-again Christian. Now he's got a YouTube, and he talks about this a lot. And I don't know if you ever studied the temperaments. Hippocrates talks about the 4 temperaments, but to me, I see it as clear as day. It's definitely something worth studying, because then you know what to expect from people. And you could tell Michael Franchese is what Hippocrates would call a melancholic, real serious, quiet, studious, real good businessman. Like, those people make really good, very analytical. They pay attention. They see every detail. And he said John Gotti was the opposite. I guess he would be, Hippocrates would call him like a choleric sanguine, or sanguine choleric. And he was boisterous, and even Franchese said he was fun to be around, and you went to a party, he always make you laugh, he had the jokes, he was fun. And those temperaments, he's describing the temperaments perfectly. But a melancholic, opposites attract. So that's why most people are married to their exact opposite, because God makes a perfect circle, makes us one. But even in business, even in friendship, most of my friends are opposite of my temperament. And, but it would also be hard to do business with one another, because you see things totally different. So that's why marriages have trouble, because you got to work together. So I wasn't surprised when Michael Franchese said, I love John Gotti, but I didn't like to do business with him. And he gave an example in a sit down. He said that, they owned a flea market and together. And he said one of Gotti's guys was stealing from him. So he wanted to get out of the flea market. They were just losing money. But he knew John Gotti's personality, that he always got to feel like he's going to win. You always got to make him. And that's in sales. I do that. I drive a truck, but I have to sell what I bring in. I deliver and I drive, it's called DSD. And I notice about a lot of guys, a lot of owners, I got to let them think they're telling me what to do. But basically, through conversation, I get them to buy what I want them to buy. If I want them to buy 50 cases, I'll try and sell them 100 cases. That's a it's a simple way of putting it, but there's other techniques I use. So Franchese says to John Gotti, knowing that he likes to be in charge, because, John Gotti was the boss of the Gambino crime family. Even though Franchese made more money than him, Franchese was like one of the highest rank he made as much money as Al Capone, they say. But his rank wasn't high. I think he was like a captain in the mafia. And again, I'm not glorifying the mafia. Pope Francis was right when he said if the mafia doesn't repent, they're going to hell. Hell is real, and they're headed there. They need to repent. I'm not trying to glorify their sin. I'm just trying to give you an example how you can negotiate with people and get things done. So Franchisi says to John Gotti, hey, I want to buy you out, knowing that would totally insult him. And John Gotti said, no, you don't buy me out, I buy you out. And that's exactly what Franchisi wanted. He just wanted him to buy him out so he could wash his hands of this losing business, this flea market they owned, and he walked away ahead. So why did I say that? I don't know. I thought it was an interesting story, but I'm talking about Christians need to sit down and talk to one another and learn the temperaments, the 4 basic temperaments, and it helps you to understand people's motivations. Now, if they were Christians, God could take the weaknesses of their temperaments and the Holy Spirit can change them and make them really great leaders. These guys would have been great businessmen, great leaders in the church, but they chose to use their gifts for evil, and you see what happens. But I apologize, I digress. I'll get back to the Bible verses. Another Bible verse that, and again, this isn't the original video. It's got the same name, but it's not the original video. In the original video, I said, listen, I'm going to give you about 20 Bible verses that Protestants don't accept. They don't believe. And you could tell, they'll say they believe it, but their theology contradicts it. But there's 42,000 different Protestant denominations because they don't believe the basic Bible verse where Jesus prayed, God, I pray that, Father, let them be one as we are one. Jesus created one church. He wanted us to be one. And men's sinfulness, men's rebellious nature separated all these churches. And, you know, you see them, they keep splintering, but the Catholic Church, we can see, I say this 1,000 times a week, historically, from St. Peter to Pope Francis, an unbroken chain of leadership and an unbroken chain of teaching. The teaching is still the same. You know, we don't change. But Protestants are always splitting off, so they're, you know, they can't really believe that Jesus wants us to be one. But because there's so many different denominations, there's so many different theologies, so many different beliefs, not everything is going to pertain to every Christian. So there's a good percentage. It used to only be the Reformed and the Presbyterian, but now there's a lot of Baptist preachers that believe this man-made doctrine called Calvinism. I mean, John MacArthur, I believe, was a Baptist. Now I think he just started his own church because he thinks he's God. So I think he's at a non-denominational church, but I think he was trained in the Baptist tradition, but he became a Calvinist. John Piper, who admits he's still a Baptist because he loves the Baptist tradition, but he's a Calvinist. But the Southern Baptists are not Calvinists. The leadership, they're teaching on paper, they're not Calvinists. But there's probably maybe a quarter of the pastors in the Southern Baptist Convention that are now Calvinists. It's a big thing going on. It's probably going to have a split. I'm guessing the way I know Protestants, within 10 years, there'll be a split, and they'll be called the Reformed Baptist or the Calvinist Baptist Convention. There'll be a split, trust me. So anyway, the Calvinists don't believe one of the most popular verses in the Christian world. John 3:16, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son. So whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. They believe God didn't die for the whole world. He only died for his elect. And there's no way you can exegete that verse and come up with this. They say, well, we know it can't mean that because based on this, and this verse. They'll take a bunch of verses out of context all over the Bible to prove their theology, to say he really didn't die for the whole world. He only died for his elect. So the only people that aren't going to perish are the people he elected that believes in him, because the people that he didn't elect won't be able to believe in him. So the basic verse that all Christians know and love, it's like our anthem, John 3:16, Calvinists cannot accept. They don't believe that verse. They don't believe that verse. And there's no other way around it other than they can't even wrench that verse out of context unless they say world don't mean world and whoever doesn't mean whoever. I mean, it's really sad. but they choose to follow the tradition of a man named John Calvin, rather than the Bible itself, rather than 2,000 years of church history and sacred church tradition passed down from Jesus to the apostles and to their successors. And that's where these Protestants get off track. They think they're believing the Bible alone, but they're really believing Bible tradition. And Protestant tradition. It's early. I'm not over caffeinated today. I'm under caffeinated. But anyway, I actually think I made a couple videos about Protestant traditions. You can look them up. And I probably made a video or two about this, Bible verses they don't believe. But part 2, I'm going to have a lot more. And hopefully I have a little more energy. God bless, and stay Catholic.